Hello. Good afternoon. Welcome. Welcome to the cool panel, okay? This is the cool panel, so you're good. You're in the right place. I'd like to welcome you to the panel on positive leadership and challenging corporate behaviors. I'd like to firstly introduce myself. My name is Kurtis. I'm the Vice Dean of the School of Human Sciences and Technology, where we have a number of bachelor's and master's programs. Among them, one you'll hear us talk about today, which is the Executive Masters in Positive Leadership and Strategy. So obviously very aligned. We have several of our distinguished alum amongst our panel and also in the audience. So welcome to all Examples alum, especially for you. I'm half American, half Spanish. I did my undergrad in the States and my MBA at a lesser school in London called London Business School. And since our distinguished panelists have very extensive careers, I'm going to try to be relatively brief when introducing them. We're going to start off on our almost far right, Noor Bint Asem, who is right there saying hi right now. Jordanian Spanish, advisor in leadership and self-development. Her objective is to help individuals reach their maximum potential, both personally and professionally, through positive thinking, inner peace, and meditation. She has a bachelor in political communication, and she's an alum of the Examples program in 2016. So she just finished. Then we have, to my right, Patricia Salgar, who's from Colombia, director of the IE Center in Bogota, responsible for international development for North Latin America, Central America, and the Caribbean. More than 15 years spent in business development, marketing, and sales strategy. She opened the first office overseas that IE ever had in Bogota, a bachelor in finance and international relations, and also an alum of both the IMBA, or the International MBA, and the Examples. Okay, so she has a double whammy there. Dr. Murat and Ünal, to our far right, German-Turkish, so a requirement is to have a double nationality to participate in this panel. Expert in social networks, executive officer at SONEAN, a company that has the objective of helping its clients incorporate the social network perspective into decision-making to go beyond the traditional financial and non-financial data. Long business career in management consulting, banking, investments, etc. He has an MBA also from a lesser school, from Kellogg, okay? But he is an IE alum with a doctorate, okay? So this is serious stuff, okay? Doctorate in business administration. And last but not least, Artur, who's two over from me. Artur de Aguirre Mendes. I originally wrote Portuguese, but then he told me I also have a Spanish passport. So I said, okay, Portuguese, Spanish, okay. CEO at Fairmont, a corporate finance company specialized in M&A in a wide range of sectors. And interestingly, he's also now in the initial stages of developing a project to create a coffee shop chain based on mindful human resources, client service, and workplace. He has also led the strategy, communication, and marketing of the political project of the former Portuguese Prime Minister, Pedro Passos Coelho. He has a bachelor's in management from the University of Porto, and of course, he's an alum of the Examples program. Okay, so welcome to all of you. Before we start, Patricia is going to help us get in the adequate mindset for this session. So go ahead, Patricia.
Thank you, Norman. Okay, what we're going to do right now, it's one of the exercises we learn in the Examples program, as 3 of us are alums. And it's going to be a tool that's going to be very helpful for you. And it's called the Mindful Minute Meditation. And one of the reasons we decided to do it is because the human body is designed in cases when you're nervous or when you're afraid to run away or just attack, right? And basically what happens is that all your blood goes to your muscles to prepare to run. And so most of the times your mind blanks out. So this exercise, I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for us here, sitting up here, because it's normal when you get nervous when you're doing presentations. And I think that many of you may have felt the sensation of being shaking and your heart races. But it's going to be very useful for you on a daily basis too. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to learn what a mindful minute is. This is an exercise about breathing. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to start breathing deeply. And during 1 minute that I'm going to count, you are going to count how many deep breaths you can take in that minute. So the purpose of the exercise is by the end, that count you make is going to give you the measure of 1 mindful minute. And you can use it any time in the day whenever you feel nervous, angry, desperate, whatever. You just need to stop for 1 minute. And that's the time the body needs to relax. And you're going to see that it's really worth doing. I just want to show you briefly what a deep breath should be, because we don't want anyone to faint after the exercise. So it's better if you close your eyes. If you don't, you just can lower your side to the floor. And a mindful and a deep breath should start in your stomach, should go deep to your throat, and then back to the stomach, okay? And it should be very slow, but not as slow as for you to lack breath. It should be something like this. Just do it at your own pace. Try to retain your breath for just millisecond, and then just and then exhale. So when I start counting, you can start breathing. Now. Time's up.
Thank you very much, Patricia. If anybody's passed out, we can call some assistance. No? Everybody's good? Okay, thank you. Meditation is just one of the tools that positive leaders use. So our subject today, which is positive leadership, challenging corporate behaviors, has to do with the current situation that we live in. Many of us, many of you, we're all suffering constant change and increasing complexity in our society, more ambiguity, everything's moving faster, more limited resources in our workplaces in many cases, and senior managers struggle to understand how to better lead their teams and organizations to address these challenges. That's the situation. Now, what's the complication? Traditional management models focus on optimizing results, but not on optimizing people. However, research clearly shows that the most important single factor that drives the bottom line is human performance. Therefore, processes should be designed around people and not the other way around. As a result of this gap, many employees feel not fully engaged, they're not fully productive, and they're not reaching their potential. But there's hope. What is the way forward? I think you can guess, okay, maybe. Positive leadership. Positive leadership is based on the science of positive psychology, which is what makes people go from being good to being great. It's based on their strengths, not on their weaknesses, so working on people's strengths. It includes behavioral fitness. It includes understanding the role of emotional climate and many other aspects. It gives leaders a new perspective. It gives them skills. And it also gives them tools to optimize their own performance, their teams, and at the end of the day, the bottom line of the company. And it allows good leaders to become exceptional. That's why we chose the title, Challenging Corporate Behaviors, because we believe that there is a better way and a more efficient way to manage people, and that is positive leadership. So, now we're going to have each of our distinguished panelists help us set the stage and define some terms for us. Some of you might be familiar with positive leadership, others maybe this is a first encounter with a concept. We're going to start with Murat, who is going to define positive psychology, which is one of the foundations of positive leadership. So Murat.
Thank you very much. It's interesting that you let me define positive psychology, because I'm the only one on the panel who hasn't dealt with the topic before in depth. So I'm trying to approach it from a very pragmatic point of view. So, I mean, if you look at literature, I think it's very much about bringing scientific methods into positive psychology that allow you to actually increase or achieve a more satisfactory life. Now, I'm coming back to the practical side and want to tell you about what we experience in our day-to-day business. Now, you highlighted, for example, that complexity has increased considerably. There's a lot of uncertainty in our environment. It has become quite volatile. And in that environment where you also have to deal with ambiguity, the question, of course, arises on a day-to-day basis, and I founded 2 companies, and the question pops up every day, is what do I need to change about our organization, not just to make it successful, but actually to enjoy life in its fullest way, but being at the same time highly productive. And it's interesting because there's so many things that affect this discussion, but let me just shortly focus on the values. And I think a lot has to do with the values that we incorporate in our lives that actually affect the way how we behave. And the values that are very important for me, for example, are independence. Now, not everyone can be independent, but we can strive for greater independence. What it meant for our companies is we don't let outside investors in because we want to be in control of our own fate. I don't want to have investors telling me every week or every quarter what to do about the company. We should be aware, you know, if we have a specific core strength in an area and we are better than anyone else in that particular area, we should also take responsibility for our outcomes. Apart from independence, it's also saying no. We say a lot of no. In the 15 years when we started our companies, on the investment side, we said, okay, we're not going to deal with hedge funds, and we're not going to work for investment companies or investment banks that are on the structured side, because we thought it's not going to go anywhere. The second thing was, in our latest entity that we dealt, it's a global corporate intelligence entity, highly unique, we said, we're not going to work for companies that, from our point of view, are on the blacklist. Tobacco companies. You might call it a sustainable approach, but actually it's a proactive way of managing our day-to-day lives in our business. For example, we don't allow any conflicts of interest with our clients. We always have exclusivity in one area. I will cut short here because my time is running out, but what I'm trying to tell you is there's so many aspects that you can look at it. And from a corporate perspective, values can actually be a driver in actually achieving a more positive life.
Okay, thank you very much, Murat. By the way, if he had gone over time, that's what would have happened. But he was on time, so we're good.
Bear the glass.
So we're good for now. Let's see if we have to use the soccer ball later on. So thank you for that, Murat. So Noor is going to help us define how positive leadership can be used at an institutional level and in terms of society. So Noor, please.
Well, building on what Murat has shared, if I can encourage you to visualize this. So it's a drop in a pond, right? So it's a ripple effect. Each and every one of us individually need to endorse that change that you hope to spread and see, you know, just transmitted all over the space and your room and your systems. It's like when Patricia just took us now through that mindful minute. some of us were uncomfortable, others were, what's going on? But there's that shared space. So it starts with the individual, primarily. It takes courage to look in, to identify one's weaknesses, one's strengths, and commitment to that change. Now, as a leader, when you're ready to really embrace yourself fully, with all the dark and the light and the in-between, that is when you can start spreading and creating and co-creating positive relationships. So that would be the first ripple effect, right, from that individual drop. And then from those co-creation of, let's say, pairs of relationships, you start spreading it to more of a bigger group and systems. So it starts with your family, it starts with your immediate team. And then from that it goes expanding gradually. This sounds beautiful, however, change at times, more often than not, has a lot of resistance. So how does one tackle that as well? In my experience so far, what I've been able to identify is and encourage is the individual work. And the minute you start embodying and endorsing that and really living the goal, the dream, the vision, and that's when it starts becoming contagious and expanding. This past year, I've slowly started implementing such practices, daily practices, which we will, as a team here, share more of in my work field, which is on leadership performance and behavioral change. I've shared articles in business magazines in order to give this different perspective of doing and being. Because as Norman shared earlier, we are living in a very volatile, hectic, stressful environment. So more than ever, it's more important to know how to create a healthy relationship with the self and with the other in order to collectively move forward positively with clear values and to just start creating a different worldview. And yeah.
You're good. You're on
I'm
time.
good,
I know you want the soccer ball, but you're good.
I don't want the soccer ball.
Okay, excellent. We didn't practice before, so this is dangerous. Okay, thank you, Noor. Now, Artur is going to talk about probably one of the main areas of activity for most of us, which is the corporate level, and how positive leadership is related and can be applied at the corporate level. So, Artur, please.
I'm trying well, the presentation of Noor was amazing. I think we could understand the way it works in ourselves. And I'm going to give you my personal experience as a, let's say, entrepreneur for 23 years, entrepreneur of business, entrepreneur of ONG, and also, as Norman told at the beginning, including with some help on a political point of view, giving advice to the former Prime Minister in Portugal. But the big conclusion I had when I started to do the examples, the big conclusion was amazing for me. I found myself as a leader, and I managed many people. As a leader, I really didn't know myself as deep as I needed and I should. For example, I thought and I think I knew my sons, for example, better, and I think it happens to almost everybody, better than I knew myself. We are in the VUCA world, as we were talking. We have a lot of stress, we have a lot of requests, we have a life very well, a lot of movement, of activity, and we lose the sense that we don't talk with ourselves, we don't know ourselves. Then that's the reason why the first big step we've done is to start to practice mindfulness, and then start to know the way my brain works better, and to get much more concentrated with the full attention in the things I really wanted in order to be much more present in the moment, that I didn't used to do. Everybody used to be very. We walk in our life, daily life, with all the heavy of the past and with the pressure of the future. That's the way things are organized, and we forget to, and we even don't know how to live the present. That's what I learned to do, to start to make my mind process, trying to be non-judgmental. It's very important for positive leaders. And then start to rebuild myself, okay? Start to understand me better and rebuild myself. Then I tried to, and I started to make that movement, after starting this process, my movement to the people that work with me. I started to explain that this theory and the way it was affecting my life, I was clearly much more happy. And I used to say, when people talk about positive leaders, that it's a question of happiness. I used to say that happiness is probably the best business we have. And it's really profitable. It's really profitable because if we can put our people, our team, with the same mind process, much more open, much more healthy mentally, much more resilient to the adversities, so we can have a team much more focused, much more energized, much more, and usually very focused in the process. Usually it has better results. Well, I don't know if I can keep on. Yeah. Okay. A little more.
At your own risk. At your own risk.
Okay. I give you only two. I would like to give you only 2 or 3 examples in concrete that I think that are interesting. Different kind of examples I'm living with. Basically, in my life, in my professional life, I'm putting it in practice with our clients, in our companies. And these 3 examples are, this is the first one. We are creating now a new, I call it a 3rd generation coffee shop generation. And we are now developing the way to transform it in a mindful place with mindful people in order to, if they are very well prepared, if they are aware and they are happy working in the business, they will transmit that happiness to the clients, and this is a kind of a chain. And we then create what we call a flourish business, when the business flourishes, but people also flourishes. I think that's the most important thing that a positive leader has to manage. The wall. Okay. Come on.
Thank you, Artur.
Alex.
Thank you. I mean, at the end of the day, positive leadership is about starting with yourself, as Dr. Murat and Noor and Artur have mentioned, starting with yourself, then focusing on your team, and eventually on your organization. It's a drop, it's the ripple effect, starting with yourself and then going outward. Now, to finalize the definition of landscape, Patricia is going to talk about how positive leadership can be applied in the educational context, as you are all IE alum, or should be. If not, you're in the wrong place. The tour is over there. This is not the Bernabeu tour, okay? We're not going to talk about the Champions League game. I think somebody's playing tomorrow. I'm not sure, but I think. So anyway, Patricia.
Thank you, Norman. When I was first asked to speak about education, I was a little bit saying I don't work in it. I mean, I work with a business school, but my day-to-day basis is not education. So I'm not an educator. That was my first reaction. And then thinking more about it, I said, no, we're all educators. And I think education is the base of everything. From the day we're born, the education we receive from our parents, school, university, business schools, and even professional contexts, training we receive is going to shape what we are and what are our strengths and our character. And so I think that it's very important. And but unfortunately, right now we're living in a crisis on the education. And I don't know how many of you have seen Sir Ken Robinson. I first knew about him because of my girls' school. And but he is a very wise person. I recommend, if you have not seen his TED Talks, he says that we need an education revolution, because the education system that most of the world uses right now was designed for the Industrial Revolution, where students are labeled as successful or not depending on a grade, and are graduated depending on a date, the date they were born, and that's completely obsolete right now. And that's why we're seeing so many kids stressed and so many kids with this, hyperactive disorders and so on. So there's something going on there. And going back to the positive psychology basis, this is about trying to educate or to put the negative side of the human being to just bring it up, because we're trying to label people, and from the moment they're not successful because they don't have an A, we just label them like unsuccessful. And that's making people stressed, and this is happening in companies everywhere. So basically, there's a whole movement right now, fortunately, and this is where positive leadership comes in, about positive education too. There's even an international organization or network, which is called International Positive Education Network, and it's based basically on focusing on the strengths and on the talent of students, and fostering these talents and capitalizing on strengths to be able to make a more individual and personalized education. So I shouldn't be a failure because I have a C in math, or because in the business class I'm not an A grade. I should be successful more because I'm talented at doing something I'm talented for. And this is a more personalized education system based on mentoring, so all the ones that are mentoring. And I think it's about not only creating more well-being within the children and the students, but also making better leaders for the future. And that's where I think our role as leaders worldwide is. So I would just like to end, if I'm on time, with two messages for you who are leaders and you all educators. And the first one is, in our daily basis, what can we make to change that mindset? And as Noor was saying, this is a drop in a pond. Just by giving an example, you can create a lot of resonance with this. And the second one is, and we were seeing this in one of the speeches this morning, is how can we get involved? Because much of this change is going to need a lot of institutional, political changes too, especially in those parts of the world where there's so much different needs apart from education. For example, in developing countries like Colombia, where I come from, how do you expect children or parents to care about education if they don't even have enough to eat, or if they don't have security to move around? So what can we do as leaders to get involved? Someone was saying today, along the day, that we should get involved in politics. I think we should do something to participate and to get involved. That's it.
Thank you very much, Patricia. Now, after defining a bit of the landscape at the corporate level, what positive psychology is, society, education, I'd like to ask a few questions to our panelists, and the rest of you feel free to jump in if you want to add something at any point. So Murat, why don't we start with you and specifically your field of expertise, which are social networks. How does positive leadership affect social networks?
Good question. Now, the area in which I do research is actually dealing with the people behind organizations. So what interests us as social network analysis is less so much how the company is financed or the environmental and social governance factors that they uphold, but more importantly, who are the people behind those organizations? How are they connected? And how does this level of connectivity actually affect organizational outcomes? So that's basically the way how we look at the world. Now, what does it mean from a pragmatic point of view, how we serve our clients? Now, I think, for example, our second company is called SONEAN. It's an acronym for Social Network Analysis. And we're providing a service called Ecosystem Intelligence, which basically CEOs across the world use to monitor really second by second any movement in their competitive and external environment across dozens of countries. Now, what does that have to do with our topic here? Now, we're moving into a world where complexity plays an incredible role. Things have become more complex, and from a psychological point of view, this complexity, the added volatility, puts a lot of pressure on us. The pressure to perform, the pressure to comply, the pressure to actually know at any point in time what's happening around us. And we have the impression that we're losing this locus of control, which is so relevant for us to function. And that's actually what we're about with ecosystem intelligence, because we're giving locus of control back to the decision makers. What does that mean? I mean, a lot of people are talking about big data. We are connecting the nodes, we are connecting data. But we connect data in a way that is very unusual, but allows our clients basically one platform across the whole global operations in one language, irrespective of the source of the language where the intelligence comes from, and dynamically on the table. And that basically creates a lot of, I wouldn't call it happiness, but honestly, I think one of the main pressures that we face today, and we face this with our children as well, is the feeling to lose out. Now, do we have to be on social media? What happens if you're not on social media? Do we lose out on something, right? A lot of people are actually not aware that they're spending 8 to 9 hours on average per day on their smartphones, just because of this feeling of losing out. Well, I think finding yourself, when we're talking about self-actualization, and I think that's very important if you lead a team. And I can't bullshit here because I have two very dear friends and colleagues here in the audience. It's really also about bringing control back. Being in control of what's happening in your environment, reducing complexity. Simplicity here is very, very important. It creates happiness. So simplicity is something we should aim for. And more importantly also, I couldn't, for example, envisage a life where we just devote our time to work. So I urge all my colleagues to get engaged in NGOs, to engage in academia. We're a small, medium-sized team, but all of our colleagues have a parallel academic career that they engage with. They either study at the bachelor, master, or doctoral level, or they teach. They do research. So that variety in itself actually adds a lot of value to the organization as such. It's not just to become much better in what we do, because ultimately we are all results-oriented to a certain extent. And what really counts is the experience that the client has, because the client ultimately pays us. But the way how we basically reach this goal is very different. And, well, we have really kicked out clients in the past because they did not treat us in the way that you would expect to be treated by a client, you see. Sometimes, and when I said at the beginning, you have to say no, getting rid of negative signals and ties and relationships in your life can be a huge value added. Now, one of the philosophies, and I know David and Janjan, who are here, know it as well, there's a constant drive in our organization to get rid of negative basically emotions, but also of people. We test people when they join us. We test, of course, their factual and their competence skills. But when we realize that they're actually a burden from a negative point of view and we can't change anything about it, we also have to say no. It happens very seldom, but no matter whether it applies to our colleagues or our customers, I think sometimes just getting rid of the negative influences can be a huge value added. There's actually a Harvard Business Review study on that looks at what does create more value, getting rid of the negative relationships at work, or making sure that you have the divas, the highly performing people. And actually, significant results show that it's better to get rid of the negative signals than having the highly performing people, because the negative people, they're like, an apple that will spoil the entire barrel. Now, and this is also important for us to know, we can be negative from time to time ourselves, but then that's the point where we come in and we have to look at ourselves and say, what am I actually doing? how did I just react to these people within the team? We're not perfect, you know. We make mistakes, but just being aware of it can sometimes help a lot.
I think that's really interesting. We're talking about positive leadership, but at the same time about getting rid of negativity and negative aspects. I don't know about the rest of the panelists. Do you have any how have you dealt with negativity, or do you agree with what Murat is saying? Do you think it's...
Well, yes, but negativity is sometimes, we need negativity. Actually, negative emotions are part of our DNA. And they're very important, because if we didn't react negatively to certain situations, we wouldn't feel danger, for example. So it's necessary. And I think that from what you said, what's important is how to control that, how to be able to acknowledge whenever you're having those negative emotions, not to be reflected on something negative around us. So that's the main idea.
That's the balance between what we learn to do as positive leaders. What we learn to do is to manage the ratio between negative and positive emotions. And when we increase our ability to have positive emotions, even we need the negative emotions, but when we increase that, we begin to be in a upward spiral of positive emotions, and it makes us much more creative, it makes us much more resilient, it makes us much stronger, mainly.
Okay, great. Thank you, Patricia and Artur. Some people relate coaching to positive leadership, and I'd like Noor to maybe kick off that topic and see what are your thoughts. You don't have the ball yet. See what your thoughts are on that, and then maybe the rest of the panelists can chip in.
Sure. So I'm a coactive executive and personal coach. Coaching, I feel, became, well, at least where I'm from, I'm in Jordan, I'm based in Jordan. And when I initially started the whole field of coaching, I was really looked at like, what is wrong with this woman, right? And then slowly, everybody and their mother became a coach. So I've seen that journey of like extreme process. But going back to coaching, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the concepts, or what does it mean really to have a coach? Coaching is about going through a journey, stepping again into a space where you're committed to change, where you're ready to take action to move from point A to point B, identifying again your strengths, your weaknesses, and how can you leverage, what is that dance that you want to get into? How can you reach that deep self-knowing in order to know when to step in and when to step out? My colleagues have mentioned control many times here, and language is so powerful. And it's funny because we don't really control much, although we have the illusion that we do. And it's more about navigating, right? It's more about understanding the self to an extent where you learn how to ride the waves that come your way. You're going to find challenges, and there are times where you're going to have to say no. And there are going to be moments where, you're there at the peak and really enjoying the ride. Therefore, coaching ultimately is about really pulling out the best of yourself through powerful questions, through that deep personal relationship where you dive into the self, get all the, blocked past conditioning, breaking those limiting habits that we fall into and sometimes are not aware of, poor listening, for example, in the workplace, or you have a boss that just, is so centered in themselves and they're impossible to, to approach. So coaching definitely complements positive leadership and positive psychology because of everything that I've just mentioned. And I'd like to build on what, all my colleagues here have been mentioning. I loved what you said about one language, how indeed positivity is really a universal language. We all know what feels good, and we all know what feels bad. Obviously, each one of us with our own, story and perspective about it, but it's pretty black or white, right? I mean, if Norman throws me the ball on my head, ouch, it's not pleasant. So it's again about identifying that and identifying that balance that we all seek and that element of fulfillment. So that's
What are the rest of your
my drill.
thoughts on coaching? Any views? Anything you want to share, or you agree with what Noor said?
They
Okay,
disagree.
fully agree. Excellent.
Disagree.
Thank you.
cannot
If we all fully agree, we're going to move on. We mentioned that Artur has some political consulting expertise and has been involved with the former prime minister in Portugal. So we'd like to give it a bit of a twist and see if positive leadership in politics, okay, kind of a dangerous cocktail, like vodka Red Bull, okay. I don't know. That's the first thing that comes to mind. I don't know why. When I hear about political positive leadership and politics, but anyway, let's give it a try, Artur. Let's see what are your thoughts.
I think it makes all sense.
Thank you.
Let me try to explain it this way. 300 years ago, the world, the known world, mainly Europe, was managed by absolute systems. There was no democracy. We are managed by kingdoms and absolute systems that were the managers of the knowledge at that time. At that time, 300 years ago, more or less, things were really bad. The people were living really bad, and started a movement from the people, from the society, that was began in France with the French Revolution, when the dictator fell down, and after that we started what is called, as you know, in history, the era of the Enlightenment. At that time, that era also began the Industrial Revolution in England, that then went to all over Europe, and the people, the paper of the society in management of, in their own management of the countries, started to be much more active. If we go to nowadays, we can see that's the basis point. We can see that the world is really very confused, VUCA, very complex, a lot of uncertainty, very with lot of ambiguity, and we are all living in that scenario. Everyone, not only leader people, but also all the society. But at the same time, we are having at this moment probably for sure an industrial, technological revolution, also an energy revolution. So things are changing a lot. When we start to see it by the point of view of a political management, what we can see is that it's happening right now, a process very interesting in my opinion, that is we are getting out of what is called the modernist approach of social construction. It means that people until now had access to the knowledge in the last decades because by the of course the schools, what the schools were teaching, because of the churches, still happens in many places, religion knowledge, and there was not many other forms to access to knowledge. Nowadays, the things with this technological revolution are changing a lot. Are changing because, right now, as we told here before, as Murat told, people now has access to much more information, and the average of the knowledge all over the world is changing, is getting higher. So with this, in this context, with this postmodernist approach, that means that people are much more open, are much more have much more access to information, have much more knowledge. People now are increasing their collective intelligence. Let's say that way. we cannot manage societies, we cannot manage people with the limitations, the political limitations that nowadays exist in our system. The examples of what is happening right now that are very interesting, for example here in Spain, that the two parties in the mainstream, so the PP and the PSOE, in the mainstream, in the last elections, lose more or less 40% of the people who went to vote. That went to vote to Podemos and Ciudadanos, that are parties of the, let's call the new society. So, what is happening right now is that the people are making the movement, the society are making the movement to change the reality of the political system. The big challenge that our political leaders have right now is how to be inside that process and how to manage the process with this new reality. Of course, we have well, there appear some new leaders that are doing a good job in a political point of view, but the ancient leaders and the ancient parties that are still in power, they have to adapt. They now have to adapt to this new reality.
This is called classical conditioning. I don't have to throw the ball anymore.
Okay. Well, just to finish, what I think, what is happening now is very challenging for everybody, is that we come from a democracy and probably we're getting in to a crowdocracy. That's the power of the ideas and the power of the people instead of the ideas of power. That is what is happening until now.
Thank you, Artur.
Sorry.
As expected, we're not doing too well on time. Nothing surprising, even with the soccer ball trick. So I'd like to move on just to one last question before we take on some of your questions. Some of them are very interesting. Some of them are very long, by the way, so I'm not sure if I read the whole question. But for Patricia, we talked before about coaching. There's also some people relate work and life balance to positive leadership, well-being, concepts of physical well-being to positive leadership. What is your view on that?
Okay. I'm going to ask your permission first, Norman, because I can't leave this room without making a little announcement.
You have to ask the rest of the panelists.
Can I
if
have
they
your
agree.
permission? Okay.
Fine.
Because we were talking about what we can do to contribute to all this positive leadership, and I just want to announce that my classmates, three of our classmates, Artur and mine, from the examples, are actually beginning or starting up a consulting firm on positive leadership, and they have this magazine that is digital. It's available on the Apple Store, but it's also available in the printed version outside the room. It's called The Positive and Mindful Leader, and it has very nice articles about positive leadership if you want to read about that.
Are you interviewed in the magazine or not?
No, I'm not, but Artur is.
Okay.
So
Good.
you're not going to read me. Okay. Okay, so work and life balance. I think that we've mentioned a couple of things here about emotions and balance. And the huge question everybody makes, and we'll, I'm sure, make ourselves is there a balance, right? We live in VUCA world. We've been mentioning that this is volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous moments of life. And how do we find balance? Is that a reality? Is it possible to find it? I know one thing for sure, and is that we do have emotions, and we do carry them everywhere. And I think it's one of the things you learn in this program is that actually you can't separate. Before doing the program, I thought that I was one person when I was at home and another person at work, and I shouldn't mix emotions into it. And that's the way I treated my team. And then I realized that that's not the reality. The reality is that whenever you get into the office and you've had a bad morning at home, you're usually going to have bad time in the office. You're going to be angry and in a bad mood, and it's going to affect your performance in your activity. And that's a reality for yourself and for the rest of your team. So you carry your emotions. So I think that more than finding a balance is finding a way to be okay. What can I do to arrive, in fact, into the office every day and feel okay and be okay with myself? And it's not easy. It's very difficult to reach that. And actually, sometimes in that quest, we tend to go to extremes. And for example, I don't know how many of you here run. How many have gotten in this trend of running, and then you say to yourself, I'm doing exercise, this is great, so I'm going to run a little more. And we're hearing this morning another speech about that, and then you run 10K, and it's perfect, and you feel okay. Then you run 21K, then you go for a marathon, then you go for a triathlon, and then you suddenly notice that your personal life is a mess because you're devoting your life to sports and to work. And where's the rest? So actually what I'm telling you right here happened to me. And it wasn't until I had a terrible accident that I realized that I had to change my day-to-day priorities and that I wasn't balancing, that sports wasn't healthy for my mind and for my body anymore. And I just want to leave you with some messages. This is the moment when I got into the program, into the Examples program, and I learned some pretty strong messages along the program. The first thing I learned, of course, because I had a very successful recovery of my accident, and today I can say that I'm back who I was 4 years ago. How did I got there? What was that made me recover faster? And from the program, I learned, for example, about my character strengths. And I learned, for example, that balance doesn't exist. I learned that balance is not permanent. Balance is a present moment, and that's very linked to the mindfulness we learned in the program. The trick is to be okay in the present, and how to, every time your life changes, you learn to be okay with who you are at that moment. And when you reach that point of feeling okay, the most probable thing is that you're going to feel okay and you're going to be happy, and that is going to be reflected in the rest of the people you work for. So my invitation here is see balance as a permanent quest. Call it however you want to call it, if it's balance, if it's just feeling okay. And one trick I use, and it's very useful, is I question myself all the time. This can be overwhelming, but something else that we learn in the program about mindfulness is that sometimes when you question things, when you question how am I feeling right now, am I okay, am I not okay, what is going on in my life, what is my meaning, my purpose in life, it can be overwhelming because you tend to judge yourself. So you learn not to judge yourself, not to compare with anyone. Just be in the present and acknowledge how you're feeling. And that is going to make a huge change in that process of questioning. But if you do this questioning every single day, how am I feeling today? How is what I'm doing right now helping me to be a better person and helping others to be better people? And that's how you're going to find your own balance. And something else that I've learned is that my balance is going to be different to yours. I can't give you a formula. It doesn't exist. And today's balance is not the same that tomorrow's or yesterday's. It's a permanent changing state. So my invitation is to ask questions. I don't know how many of you have seen the film Bridge of Spies. I don't know, but when I was thinking about this, I related to this character that actually he won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. I think his name is Mark Rylance. And during the film, Tom Hanks, which is the main actor, he asks a couple of times during the film, or several times, he asks this character, he says, "You don't seem to worry." And every time this person answers, "Would it help? Would it help to worry? Would it help to feel stressed at this point? So how is what I'm doing right now helping me to become a better person?" Mm-hmm. Do I have time? No? Done? Okay.
Thank you for asking, Patricia. Appreciative inquiry, thank you. Okay, we have a couple of minutes left. I've read through most of your questions. Some of them are extremely deep and complex, so we have a lot of strategic people in the room who asked me things about how ethics and philosophy are related to positive leadership. So, that very interesting question. However, in 1.5 minutes, I think it's going to be a challenge, even for our distinguished panelists. So, there's for the panel, and what I'm going to ask is if each one of you, for about 30 seconds to a minute, to wrap it up. There are many questions about how can I change negative behaviors of people at work. How can I positively affect behaviors at work that I want to be replicated, that I want people to imitate? What can I do to eliminate roadblocks along the way? Is talking about stress and about complexity already a roadblock to be a positive leader? Or is it okay to recognize that? So I think probably just to finish it off, if each one of you can give your 2-3 tips of what can be applied this evening when everybody goes back to the office to be productive Friday afternoon. Probably Monday morning, okay? Probably Monday morning. In most parts of the world, Monday morning. What can people do to start working? If they're interested in positive leadership, they're interested in trying it out. Also, if there's anything that maybe they should read, any recommendations, just whatever you guys think is important in any particular order. We're going to go crazy now. Whatever you guys want.
Well, I mean, I'm just trying to be pragmatic. So what I do, for example, is I set my rules. Sometimes my colleagues, for example, will see me disappear for lunch, and I go for a run, skip my lunch, come back, but I feel good. It's the part of the day where I break the day. I've really committed myself to the organization in the morning. I don't go for lunch, but I do my sports and come back and I just feel good. Mm-hmm. That adds a lot to your positive stance. The other thing is, well, saying no also means that, when you create rules, one rule goes towards the family. The Saturday is sacred. We call it the daddy day. And when I leave tomorrow morning with the first flight from Frankfurt or here from Madrid, it's because I want to be at the soccer game of my son, which starts at 9:30, around that area. So sacred being, I keep this rule, I'm there for the family as well, and I feel comfortable about it. Because there's always this feeling about dissonance. When you don't get things done, you look back and say, oh my, I could have done much better than that. So setting really rules, whether it's related to your family, your personal health, how you treat your colleagues. And one of the big rules is, I have never shouted in the organization, not in the last 16 years. That's a clear rule, no shouting. Everyone is there to come up with critique, but it should be constructive. It should take us further and provide alternatives, what we can do. Just coming up with negative critique is, critical elements is not enough. You have to show a kind of solution. So there are all those rules that we basically apply that help us to just enjoy life a bit more. And we know we're all stressed out, but it makes actually life much easier. And another rule, for us at work, for example, we all switch our mobile phones off. That's another thing. And everyone has now the opportunity to work, not just sitting, but also standing. So I've skipped my chair. I'm basically standing, and I realized that working while I stand, I'm much more concentrated, and it affects my health a lot. So all those bits and pieces that I do to actually make life easier for all of us.
Okay, thank you, Murat. Since we're being crazy, we're going to follow the order.
We're going to follow the order. Yes. Fine. Going really out there. Building on Murat, I cannot capitalize, highlight, I don't know what to do, the self. If there's anything you take away from our session today, is starting with you. When you look at yourself in the mirror, and really, even the examples you just gave, right? He feels he needs to let off steam, go for a run, and come back, right? So you need to know your strengths, you need to know your weaknesses, you need to be committed to getting to know your personal values, what to you is right and wrong. Language is so important. A perspective is what are you saying no to? However, I invite you to say, what are you saying yes to? And build from that. Rules as well, well, what are your agreements? What is it that you're agreeing to in this life? I mean, it's not just work and life. Work is life as well. I mean, you're not stopping living while you're working, right? So it's really integrating and looking at it holistically. it's not necessarily easy. It takes courage, it takes discipline, it takes willpower, and again, echoing what we've all shared here, surrounding yourself by people who endorse that and encourage that, creating that ecosystem around you that helps you flourish as well. So pass
That's
it on
great,
to
Noor.
Artur.
Great. Artur,
I'm going
please.
to be very fast.
I'd be surprised, but go ahead.
What I would do is, of course, what Noor said about being mindful with myself. But what I would do in concrete with my teams would be give them the first 10 minutes each day, give them to mindful processes. So give them the opportunity to get inside this world, their world. So I think it would be very profitable for the team. I would teach them also how to manage the change of habits, of bad habits. That is very usual for everybody. And the last thing I would do is to apply a tool, a very interesting tool in positive approach, that is called appreciative inquiry. That changes the way we look at the problems in the company. It doesn't work on the basis of problem solving, but in the other way, that is a discovery process of the opportunities and the people themselves. And it used to be a very strong tool to make, to stop negative bias. Yeah.
Congratulations, Artur.
Thank you very much. I did it.
Patricia, please, to wrap it up.
Yeah, I think very practical. Connect with your people. You don't know the power, you know, and it's a fact and it's scientifically proved, the power of the personal contact and the look in the eye with people. A partner once told me, when I was talking to some employees and they were telling me their problems, their personal problems, and he told me, why do you even ask? Why do you bother? I mean, it's not your problem, and then you're going to be all troubled. But that's not real. I mean, if you show compassion, you're going to be a better person, and people are going to resonate with you, and they're going to feel better. And don't let, these things are amazing, but don't let these little things to replace your personal connections. Try to speak to people personally. And something I've seen in my business, in my office, and it's a fact and it's measured, is that whenever you connect more to people, even if it's a sale negotiation or just a conversation, the productivity of what you're looking for is going to be increased by like a 30%. So if you're trying to close a deal, try to close it personally and look to the person in the eye. There's nothing like the chemistry you create when you have a physical contact. And this is not going to replace by a video conference. It's not going to be the same result. So just try to connect and speak more and find more time to meet personally with your employees, with your team, with your family, with everybody around us, and you're going to see an immediate effect on positivity.
Thank you, Patricia. Just to wrap it up, I'd like to say thank you for coming, first of all. Thank you for your questions also. And of course, I'd like you to join me in thanking our distinguished panelists. Thank you very much.